On episode 355 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Chris Wark and discuss his book, Chris Beat Cancer, a comprehensive plan for healing naturally. You can find the full show notes for this book at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/355. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness Podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Our guest today was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 26. And rather than following the traditional route to healing, he decided to take a road less traveled. And I think you're going to find this a very fascinating story and a really cool book. The name of the book is Chris Beats Cancer. Our guest today is Chris Wark. With no further ado, here's Chris. Chris, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Alan, good to be with you.
I think when we look at cancer, it's probably one of the scariest words in the English language, and it's getting bigger. So more and more of us are getting that diagnosis at some point in our life. And I think I actually read a statistic that everybody gets cancer, but just some of us don't live long enough to die of cancer.
Yeah, that's basically true. That's basically true. Cancers come and go in life without us realizing it, and almost everyone has cancer cells in their body. Cancer cells are just simply mutated cells, cells that mutate for a variety of reasons. And your immune system is designed to identify and eliminate those cells. But what can happen and what is happening is that many of us, 1 out of every 2 men and almost 1 out of every 2 women now, are on track to develop cancer because of our diet, lifestyle, environmental choices, and stress. And I can dig into those, as we talk more of how those elements are causing cancer and what can be done to prevent and even heal cancer. But yeah, we're on track we're already at epidemic levels of cancer.
Yeah. And so I think as, now at my age, and I'm 53. So, as I kind of look at it, it's okay. I need to be monitoring myself. I need to be, I guess, doing the things I'm supposed to do at the age-related times I'm supposed to do them, whether I want to or not. And then I think women are so much better at this than men. But, in your book, Chris Beats Cancer, you did a couple different things. One, and I want to get into, is your story, which is extremely compelling because I couldn't even hardly wrap my mind around my 26-year-old self finding out that I had cancer. But you took a step back and you said you titled the blog originally and now the book, Chris Beats Cancer, but you don't actually think of it now in terms of actually winning or beating something. It has a different flavor or idea to you.
Yeah, that's right. When people think about cancer, they definitely think about beating it, winning it, fighting it. It's a battle. And that's all terminology that was created by the cancer industry because they had to do that in order to convince people to suffer, because the treatments are so brutal that if you can convince someone that it's going to be a fight, right? You get them in this mentality where they accept that suffering is involved in the cancer battle. But it doesn't have to be that way. And so, Chris Beat Cancer is the name of my book and the name of my website. But as I've thought about it more over the years, I thought, it's not about beating cancer. It's not about a battle. It's about healing the body. That's really what it's about. And unfortunately, the medical industry, pharmaceutical industry, they're not interested in healing, right? They're more interested in treating a disease. And cancer, there are over 200 types of cancer. There will never be a pharmaceutical cure for all cancers. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding in the public eye, thanks to the pharmaceutical medical industry and the media, about what cancer really is and the way you should approach it.
And I think that's really important, is because as we look at this thing, the C word, it is hard. It is hard to sit there and say, I've got to make certain decisions, and my doctor's going to tell me things, and I'm going to have read or heard things, and it can be confusing. And like I said, I just can't really even wrap my mind around my 26-year-old self making
Right.
decisions that you made, and having the kind of the, I guess, the epiphany, or just the kind of just faith, and it's probably a little bit of both, to have done what you did. So if you don't mind, can you take us back there and talk through this? Because you were like I said, 26 years old, had been married for 2 years, had your whole life in front of you until you didn't.
Yeah. So I'd been having abdominal pain for the better part of a year, and I thought maybe I had an ulcer or something. And unfortunately, the pain got progressively worse. And I went to the doctor. They did a colonoscopy after a series of other tests and found a golf ball sized tumor in my large intestine. And when I woke up, they said, "Hey, man, you got this tumor." And we took a biopsy. We're sending it to the lab, and fingers crossed, hopefully it's just a benign tumor and it isn't cancerous. But it was. And this was 2 days before Christmas when I found out I had colon cancer. And they said, "Look, we got to get this thing out of you right away, and before it spreads and kills you." And that's, the kind of conversation that every cancer patient has pretty much with their doctors. There's a lot of fear and urgency, and they're often rushed into treatment that they don't understand, treatments that can have life-threatening side effects and long-term debilitating side effects. But because it's it's so urgent, or they're led to believe that it's urgent, they say yes. And it's sort of a tragedy, because most cancers, when people find out they have cancer, a lot of times they don't even have pain. They just, something came up on a scan or a mammogram, a lump, a bump, or whatever. They don't feel sick. They don't look sick until treatment starts, right? That's actually what makes them sick, is treatment. So I said yes to surgery. I didn't know anything at the time. And surgery, by the way, is not that big a deal for a lot of cancers. So I'm not anti-surgery or anything like that. But I was able to postpone them about a week to 10 days. They wanted to have me in surgery before Christmas. I mean, I was diagnosed 2 days before Christmas. They were trying to get me in there before Christmas. And so I said, "Look, I really don't want to be in the hospital over Christmas. Can we just postpone it till after?" And so I went in on December 30th. They took out a third of my large intestine, took out the tumor, a bunch of lymph nodes. And when I woke up, they said, "Look, it's worse than we thought. You're stage 3C. Stage 4 means it's in 2 organs." So it was cancer had left the primary tumor site. It was in the lymph nodes. It was on its way to my liver. And so they said, "Your next step is 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy if you want to live and survive, because surgery, at your stage, we can't cure your cancer with surgery." So I, initially accepted that was my fate. My future was the chemo patient at 26. But a couple things happened in the hospital, faith was a big part of my journey. And so from the very beginning, I was just praying and saying, "God, help. What do I do? What's wrong in my life? Why am I sick?" And I chose to believe there's a verse in Romans that says, God works all things for the good of those who love him. And so I chose to believe that God was going to work this for my good somehow. But I didn't like it. And, I definitely would have traded places with anybody, but I had no choice, right? Then other than just, okay, well, what else do I have to believe in, right? Luck. I hope I'm lucky enough to survive. So I really put my faith, hope, and trust in God first and foremost, and to lead me in the process. And so I'm in the hospital. They took out this, tumor. And then the first meal that they served me after taking out a third of my large intestines was a sloppy Joe. The
Yeah.
sloppy Joe, yeah, the sloppy Joe is just a funny kind of food item, nobody likes sloppy Joes. Restaurants don't serve sloppy Joes. It's like the best, worst example of cafeteria food, right? Like
Yeah.
the main place you would find a sloppy Joe is if you're at summer camp or, in the military or maybe prison. And to my surprise, they're serving sloppy joes to cancer patients in the hospital right after surgery. Even more ironic is the fact that red meat, beef, is a group 2 human carcinogen, specifically known to cause colon cancer. Right. So it's like giving the heart, the guy that has an open heart surgery, like giving him some barbecue, when he wakes up. So I thought that was very strange. Of course, I didn't know any of this, right? But I still knew, like, why are they serving this terrible food in the hospital to sick people? Like, I knew there was a difference between health food and sort of junk food. And that was a little clue, right? The first little sort of crack in the foundation of the medical industry from my perspective. And then the day I was told I could go home, my surgeon came in to check on me, and we were having a conversation about what was going to happen next. And I said, well, hey, is there, there are any foods I need to avoid or whatever? And he said, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. Clearly, my abdominal surgeon, who I thought might have some expertise on digestive health, right?
Yeah.
Optimal nutrition for healing your gut or something, had nothing to say about it. So that, again, another little crack in the foundation. Start my faith, hope, and trust in the medical system, which I was placing some there too. It was starting to erode. I got home and I was thinking about my life and my future and chemotherapy and like what I would become, what chemotherapy would do to me. And it was a scary thought. It was a scary feeling to know that, like, in less than a month, we're going to start injecting you with some very, very toxic drugs that are going to make you sick. Your hair is going to fall out. You're going to lose your appetite. You're going to lose weight. I was already like borderline underweight.
Yeah, I think you said you were like 6'2" and 155 pounds or something like
Yeah,
that.
I was right
And
around there.
that was full healthy, generally healthy.
Yeah.
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 Now you were going to get to this emancipated state,
Yeah, emaciated, I think you mean.
emaciated. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, right. And at that time, I was probably closer to 150, maybe even a little under 150, because I had lost weight because I had not been eating very much because eating was causing this pain. So I was already really thin, and I was just thinking, my instincts were just telling me, like, this is not what you need to do. Like, this is wrong for you. But I didn't know what else to do. And just the idea of poisoning my way back to health didn't really make sense to me. So I prayed about it. My wife and I were sitting on the couch, and I said, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, just please show me. I don't know what to do. It's just a prayer of just a humble prayer, asking for help, desperately asking for help, sincerely, desperately asking for help. And a couple days later, I got a book that came to my house that was mailed to me from a friend of my dad's who lives in Alaska. And the guy who wrote this book had found out he had colon cancer. And instead of having surgery, chemo, and whatever treatment was offered to him, because he had seen family and friends suffer and die from cancer treatment, he decided to not do it. And happened to have a friend who was a health nut who said, well, what you should do is you should go back to the Garden of Eden. You should start eating fruits and vegetables only, just raw fruits and vegetables as your primary source of food. And you should probably drink a lot of carrot juice too. So that's what this guy did. And a year later, his tumor was gone. And so he had written a book. His name's George Malcolmus. And he had written a bunch of books and stuff. And I started reading this one book he wrote where he's telling a story. And it just blew my mind. I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, I can't believe this showed up. This is the answer to my prayer. I need to change my diet. And I had this big epiphany, which was the way you're living is killing you. The way you're living is killing you. Most of us don't realize, and we're not told, that only 5% roughly of cancers are genetic. And what that means is that up to 95% of cancers, based on available studies, are caused by our diet, lifestyle, environment. environmental factors, environmental pollution. Those three factors, and stress is underneath them, and I can talk about that as well. But it's a root cause of cancer. But stress is hard to measure, but it's easy to measure diet. It's easy to measure lifestyle, and it's easy to measure environmental toxic exposure. So those are the main drivers of cancer. And it's the way we're living and what we're putting in our mouth and the choices we're making every day that are leading us down the path of health or down the path of disease. There's a recipe for health, and there's also a recipe for disease. And most people are following the recipe for disease. And I was. And I realized that, one of the first things that, big light bulbs was in the diet category. In America and most industrialized countries, we're eating a diet that's very different than our ancestors, and that's very different than some of the healthiest populations around the world with the lowest rates of cancer. What a lot of people don't think about, things that I think about and researched in great detail in my book, is the fact that there are countries all over the world with much lower cancer rates than us, right? And it's not genetic, it's their diet, lifestyle, and environment.
Yes.
So what's wrong with our diet? Well, it's way too much processed food, junk food, and fast food, right? Way too much sugary garbage, artificial processed colors, flavors, additives, preservatives, right? Soft drinks, way too much meat and dairy and oils, sugar, salt, right? All of this stuff is really not natural, right? I mean, you could make a case of meat and dairy is natural, but like the high levels of sugar and salt, processed sugar and salt, and oils and artificial foods are, we're consuming them at unprecedented levels in human history. And our meat and dairy consumption is far in excess of healthy populations around the world. In fact, they're populations with the lowest rates of cancer and the longest lifespans. This is really what's most important. Who's living the longest? And on every continent, if you look at the isolated pockets of people that have the longest lifespans, they have a lot of things in common, but one of them is they eat a diet that's about 95% plant-based. So they're not pure vegan, but they eat mostly fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, whole grains, food from the earth. Food from the earth, unadulterated, whole foods. And the animal foods they eat are very minimal because they have lack of access to animal food. So you just think about, poor villages and remote parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
The animals they're eating are not coming from McDonald's, Wendy's, KFC, right? They're not even coming from the supermarket. They're coming because they either caught and killed something, which is not happening every day, or because they raised an animal and killed it. And usually when they're killing an animal they raised, it's for a feast and the whole village is enjoying, right? The cow, or the goat, or the pig. So in practical terms, they're only eating animal products a few times a week, right? Like 3 times a week. Sometimes in some regions, it's like 3 times a month. Versus in the US, it's 3 times a day. Okay. Huge difference there. So that's the dietary part. So, as I was reading this book, I didn't learn all that from this book, but I learned some really basic stuff that got me excited about changing my life. And I love the idea of going back to a diet that was just fruits and vegetables from the earth, like organic, of course, and eliminating everything from my life that could be toxic and disease promoting. So I turned my life upside down because I wanted to restore my health, and I took full responsibility for it. And the problem in the cancer community, of which there are many, but one huge problem is when a patient is diagnosed with cancer, they're always like, Doc, why do you think I got cancer? What caused my cancer? I'm too young to have cancer, right? Even if they're 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever. And the doctors almost always say, well, we don't know what caused your cancer, but it might be genetic. Do you have family history? Well, yes, my so-and-so, my aunt, my uncle, my mom, somebody had cancer. Well, that's probably why you have cancer. It's genetic, unfortunately. Or if you say, well, I don't have any family history. And they say, well, it may just be just bad luck. We're so sorry about that, but we'll do our best to take care of you and treat you and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, quick question though. I mean, because, as I look at it, when someone gets into the medical profession, I have to give them some kudos there because they're not walking an easy path. particularly when they start going to become an oncologist, because they're stepping into a career field where their success rate is never going to be high enough. They're always going to be losing patients to cancer, and they're going to be facing some of some terrible things. So I have to believe they go into this with a noble intention and saying, I really, I see this young man, I want to help him, but your doctor's trying to talk you in a direction. And of course, in most of the hospitals, or the doctors are in the hospital, so they're there, they know what you're eating. Then you ask for advice, and they're like, well, I can't give you nutrition advice, is effectively what he was saying. He just said it in a kind of, what in his mind, a little bit more of a comical way. Why do you feel that we're trapped in this thing? Why do you feel that doctors get into this thing and then really just don't have the tools?
Yeah, I cover this in great detail in the book, but the just try to summarize it quickly. Most doctors, I think, pursue a career in medicine with noble intentions because they want to help someone, right? Because so and so, my grandmother, my dad, like somebody I know died of cancer or whatever, and I want to help people. That's great, love that. But medical school is absolutely soul crushing. Doctors and med students have the highest rates of suicide of any profession because the current medical system is like a meat grinder, and it takes courageous, like loving, empathetic, wonderful people that want to serve humanity, and basically, like boot camp, like destroys their spirit and turns them into, compliant, assimilated cogs in a machine. And they're only trained how to do surgery, chemo, radiation, right? That's about it for oncology. And they're not trained in nutrition. They're not trained in lifestyle medicine. They're not trained in prevention. And because the pharmaceutical industry has such a stranglehold on medicine, they dictate what doctors are taught. And so what happens is a young person goes into med school, and it takes them 15 years to get through med school, to get through residency, to go into private practice, to build up their practice and start treating patients before they realize that the treatments they are giving people just don't really work, right? Most of their patients are not alive. And by that time, they're just trapped in a system that pays them really well, that doesn't work. And when I say doesn't work, it's like not curing most cancers. So that I have great empathy and sympathy for physicians. They're not the bad guys. There are a few bad ones out there for sure. You got to keep in mind, doctors are just humans. And there's some awful humans in the world. Some of them are doctors, right? There's awful plumbers, electricians, flight attendants. There's bad people in every profession. But giving them the benefit of the doubt, most doctors are really good people and they want to help, but they're trapped, right? They have a very small number of tools at their disposal, and they don't have training in nutrition and prevention and, true healing modalities. They just are trained. This patient has this type of cancer. This is the drug you give them. This is how many treatments of the drug they get. This is the dose they get based on their body weight, and cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Yes.
So that's the way it works. And the system is so, like I said, it's just a huge machine. And anybody who's ever been to the doctor knows, you sit in a waiting room for an hour or more, and then you go and see the doctor for 15 minutes, right? I mean, how much can you help somebody in 15 minutes, right? Or 20 minutes? Like, they don't get enough time because of the way the compensation structure is. They don't have enough time to really dig into your life and help you solve problems and help you get to the root causes of your disease, right? They're not even trained how to do that anyway. So it's a vastly poorly constructed system. And I say poorly constructed, it's actually constructed very well to make as much money as possible. But the problem is that doctors and patients are suffering, right, under the weight of this really terrible system.
Yes. I recently got this review, and it's, because I refuse to take statins. And
Yeah.
that's a personal choice. My doctor continually wants me to manage my LDL, I'm looking at other components in my cardiovascular risk and saying, I don't think that singular number is worth me doing and dealing with the other things that those medications would do to me. So I don't want to be on those medications. And so there's a little bit of uh, flack from a reviewer that I was telling people to not take statins, and that was not my intention. My intention was just understand, as in my situation, as in your situation, is that there typically is never just one path. And if the doctor's pushing you down a singular path that you've seen where that leads for a lot of people, just realize there likely are other alternatives out there.
Yeah, it's the only path they know. It's the only path they're trained in, and it's the only path they're allowed to talk about.
Yeah, the standard of care.
This is the standard of care. So physicians risk losing their reputation, risk losing their license to practice medicine if they deviate from the standard of care. Well, who wrote the standards? The pharmaceutical industry. So, like, cholesterol is a great example, and we can rabbit trail on this for a minute. But the body produces cholesterol. Your liver produces cholesterol, but the biggest source of cholesterol in the body doesn't come from your liver. It comes from our diets. And so most people have high cholesterol because they're eating it. They're eating cholesterol. When you eat cholesterol, it raises your cholesterol. And the only way to eat cholesterol is to eat animals. So if you don't eat any animal food, then your consumption of cholesterol goes to zero. And then the only source of cholesterol in your body comes from your liver. And so there have been two landmark studies on advanced heart disease patients. And of course, your doctor is not talking about this, but anyone can easily Google this, read the studies. But the first one was done by Dr. Dean Ornish, and then it was duplicated by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, both MDs. And they both proved that you can take heart disease patients, advanced heart disease patients, and reverse the progression of their heart disease, stop their heart disease, prevent future heart attacks and strokes and cardiovascular events, and open their veins back up by putting them on a plant-based diet. And this is a very strict plant-based diet, so it's no animal food and also no oils. The reason no oils is because saturated fat also sends signals, triggers the liver to produce cholesterol. So you might try this as a fun experiment, but if you eliminate all animal foods and oils for 30 days, 30 to 90 days, but 30 days minimum, and get your blood checked again and look at your cholesterol numbers, you will likely see a significant drop. And the drop will continue for the better part of a year. It'll keep going down and down and down as your body adapts and starts to self-regulate. Another driver of high cholesterol is heavy metal toxicity. So lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. There have been studies that show that when you have high levels of those metals in your body, it triggers the production of cholesterol. So cholesterol is a defense mechanism that your body is producing to protect itself. And so the more injurious elements in your body, toxic elements circulating in your body on a daily basis, the more your body has to protect itself. So high cholesterol can also be the result of your body trying to protect you. So, just interesting, fascinating kind of rabbit trail stuff, but fun to talk about nonetheless.
Yeah.
So,
well, when you because you made those huge drastic changes to what you eat and how you manage your environment and those other things, which again, kudos to you for taking that path and putting yourself in that that mode of thought to I am doing this. There's not another option. I'm not taking this other option. But in the book, you also talked a lot about mindset and the things that you did to basically, for lack of a better word, just positive attitude yourself through this. Can you kind of talk a little bit about some of those mindset changes that you went through to basically just have a mindset of health?
Yeah, so I call it the beat cancer mindset, really, because the cancer is not so much a battle in the body as it is in the mind. And because taking a holistic approach to health is very different than taking a passive approach to cancer treatment. So what I was saying earlier about when doctors tell the patients, it's either bad luck or bad genes, what that does, that's some of the most egregious borderline malpractice advice a doctor can tell a person, because what they've effectively done is said, there's nothing you did to contribute to your disease. Therefore, there's nothing you can do to help yourself. We are your only hope. And what that does is it makes the patient into a powerless victim of disease. And it could not be further from the truth. What we have to do is accept responsibility for our health. And so having a beat cancer mindset starts with accepting responsibility for your life, your health, and your situation, and that your decisions have led you to where you are today, right? We all make decisions. Those decisions have consequences. Sometimes we make smart decisions and have good things happen. And sometimes we make not so smart decisions and not so good things happen. Sometimes things that happen to us are the result of decisions of others. But most of what happens to us is the result of the decisions we make. There's an expression, everything happens for a reason. But I like the expanded version of that expression, which is everything happens for a reason. And most of the time, the reason is you. You're the reason.
Yeah.
So when you start there, you realize, okay, I've got a part to play in my life and my health and my disease. I want to take an active role. I want to help my body heal. What can I do to help myself? And that starts the process of, the adventure, the healing adventure, right? This process of re-education on health and nutrition and healing cancer. And so I went down this deep rabbit hole trying to figure out who has healed cancer naturally. What do these people do? What are the experts saying, like natural health and wellness experts, cancer healing experts, alternative therapy experts? Like, who are the players? What are they saying? What do I need to be doing? And I just embarked on this journey of changing my entire life. The diet was a huge component, but detoxification is huge. Removing all the toxic stuff from my home environment, body care products, cleaning products, like cleaning out all that stuff. This was January 2004. So back then, now it's kind of hip and cool to buy organic body care products and organic cleaning products, non-toxic, environmentally friendly products. Like, it's really come a long way in the last 14 years. Right. But back then it was pretty fringe and like there were very limited options in terms of non-toxic products and things, and even finding organic food. But, I just made a decision. I was willing to do whatever it took to get well. And that's part of the mindset as well. It's like, I'm taking responsibility for this, and I'm going to do everything in my power to change my life. And I'm not going to make any excuses. Like, I'm going to change my whole life. And so that meant I was willing to stop eating the food that I liked. Right? I was willing to stop eating cheeseburgers and pizza and drinking Cokes and Dr. Pepper, right? Because my health was more important to me. There was nothing I was willing to hold on to that was more important than life and health. And I had a strong reason to live. Again, this all goes back to mindset. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? What's your motivation? For me, it was my wife and my parents. I was a newlywed, been married 2 years. I'm an only child. So, like, the idea of my parents and my wife standing at my graveside was so just absolutely painful to me, right? To think about my parents burying their only child, my wife burying me. And we've been together 8 years. We dated for 6 years and we've been married for 2. So, we were pretty close.
Yeah.
And so those were my reasons to live. And I had to organize all this stuff in my head, right? Like, do I want to live? Why? Why do I want to live? And if so, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to cross my fingers and hope for the best? Or am I going to take massive action to change my life and help my body heal? And obviously, I took massive action. So we've been conditioned, though, in our culture to look for the quick fix, the magic bullet, the hack, right?
Yeah.
Biohacking. What a crock. What an absolute
I'm glad you said
crock.
that, because I thought I might be the only person on earth that actually kind of felt that way, because
I hope it's not just us two, Alan.
I
Really.
do. I'm like, In
Yeah.
my book, it's coming out. I talk about an experiment that you use big rocks, little rocks, and sand. And the kind of the gist of the whole
Yeah,
story is
I know it.
just do the big rocks first. And there's so many damn big rocks in front of us that you don't have to be worried about the sand right now. That's not going to help you at this point of your journey. And particularly if you're dealing with an illness, you need to find that big rock as fast as you can and implement that in your life. You don't need to be focused on the sand. The big rock is right
Yeah.
there. It's staring you right in the face. And you have to, like you said, take massive action and get that big rock in your jar.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I say something very similar to that often to my group. We have, people in a coaching program, and I have a large community of people that follow me and stuff, and that I'm trying to constantly encourage and inspire. And one of the things that I just found myself saying, because I just saw these obvious sort of glaring problems in people's lives, or not problems. It was more like stumbling blocks, right? And so I realized, I don't even know how I came to this conclusion exactly, but anyway, the expression is, don't let the little things get in the way of the big things.
Yes.
Because sometimes so many people, they just get caught up in some dumb little detail and they get hung up on it and they can't take action because they have some kind of like confusion, or they didn't need some kind of answer on some little, some little quibbling kind of uh, question that just doesn't matter, right? So feel free to use that in your book and give me a quote. Don't let the little things get in the way of the big things. You can Google it though to
Exactly.
make sure no one else said it first.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. And this thing about hacking, it's like everybody's looking for a quick fix and a magic bullet. And the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the supplement industry is ready to take advantage of anyone with that mentality, right? And the truth is, health is not caused by a hack, right? You can't hack your way to health. What you have to do is you have to change everything. You have to take massive action, right? It's not about like, oh, what's the minimum effective dose? That's a recipe for failure. Now, having said that, I love it when small changes produce big results. But the reality of it is massive action produces massive results. Small changes usually produce small results. But if you make enough small changes, they add up to a big result, right?
Yes.
So all those little changes that I made in my life, right? Removing every toxic thing in my home, replacing my body care products, eating all organic food, like cutting out all the junk food, fast food, processed food, like all that stuff, like exercising every day. Exercise is so amazing. And that's part of I mentioned the what's causing and contributing to cancer and what can you do to reverse it. Like, sort of my life's mission and work is to educate people on this, to help patients take care of themselves and increase their odds of survival, and help people that want to prevent it, right, decrease their odds of ever getting cancer. But the plant-based diet's a huge part, but then exercise is the other big part. It's like, oh, wow, this really complicated idea, diet and exercise. But, this is the 40 Plus Fitness podcast. I'm 41 years old. Spoiler alert, I didn't die. I'm almost 15 years out. My 15-year cancerversary is in December. And I'm the strongest I've ever been in my life. I'm in the best shape. I'm the most fit I've ever been, and exercise is the reason. But beyond just being strong and fit, exercise actually flips genetic switches in your body. It flips genes that are anti-cancer genes, cancer protective genes. It turns them on, and it turns cancer promoting genes off. So, it doesn't matter if you inherited some cancer gene, right? Exercise can keep that gene off. That's how powerful it is. And so we know, based on numerous studies, which I reference in the book, you need at least 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week, up to 60 minutes. So somewhere in that range, 30 to 60 minutes a day of exercise, aerobic exercise, strength training. Get in there, get sweaty, huff and puff, run, walk, do yoga, do karate, rock climbing, like move your body. Sweaty exercise really is the best, because sweating detoxifies your body of heavy metals, namely the big four: mercury, arsenic, cadmium, and lead. So exercise is huge. The plant-based diet, tons of fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables have all these amazing anti-cancer compounds. And Americans are only eating 1 to 2 servings of fruits and vegetables per day on average, which is terrible, right? Terrible. It's abysmal. And when you look at the healthiest populations around the world, they're eating a minimum of 10 servings per day. And so that's actually the new recommended dietary minimum is 10 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. It sounds like a lot. And people think, a serving, what is that, 10 meals? A serving is only half a cup. So a plate of veggies is going to be 3 or 4 servings, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to eat 3 or 4 servings of fruits and vegetables.
And when you're eating predominantly plants, you find yourself eating from a volume perspective, it feels like it's more. There's a lot of water, some
Yeah.
fiber in there, and then, all the good stuff. But you'll look at a serving of broccoli is going to look about the same as probably the chicken breast you have sitting there. So if you had the chicken breast wasn't there, and instead you had quinoa, the broccoli, and then maybe some beans or maybe a salad or just even a big honking salad, you're looking at picking up, like you said, 3 to 4 servings of those vegetables pretty easily, pretty quick.
Easily. Oatmeal for breakfast, a big salad for lunch, cooked veggies for dinner, like, rice, beans, potatoes, all that, the good starches that have unfortunately been demonized by so many health gurus and weight loss gurus that starches are the enemy and you need to eat chicken breast and, kale or whatever. But the truth is the healthiest, longest living populations subsist on starches. That's their staple food. They're eating about 65% of their calories from carbohydrates. So rice, potatoes, and lots of beans, especially
But,
beans.
but
Beans are
we're not talking the instant kind. We're talking they're
yeah,
growing
no,
them
no.
locally, they're sprouting them, they're doing their food the traditional ways. So it's a
Yeah.
little different than just walking in and buying a box of instant oatmeal or instant oats and calling that your starch. You do have to look at the quality.
Quality matters, absolutely. Organic matters. If you can find it and afford it, organic is best because you're reducing your exposure to toxic pesticides, especially Roundup, glyphosate,
Yeah.
which is a probable human carcinogen. And there's a really fascinating study that just came out of France where they followed tens of thousands of people over 5 years, and they found that those who ate an organic diet had a 34% reduced risk of breast cancer, obviously women, and had a 70 to 80% reduced risk of Hodgkin's and non-Hodgkin's lymphomas. I mean, that's huge. What does that tell
Yeah.
you, right? That tells you that non-organic food, the pesticides used in non-organic food are causing a percentage of those cancers. And there's multiple studies linking lymphomas to pesticides as well. So
And in my next episode, I'm actually talking to a woman that wrote a book called Informed Consent, and she deep dives into that topic as well. So
good.
stay tuned. We're going to be talking about Roundup in the next episode.
Yeah.
Now, another big, I'm not going to call it a major action, but it was something that came across your path, and you've been using this successfully in your wellness journey since you were diagnosed. Is you've been doing some fasting. And
Yeah,
I know that
fasting.
there's an
Yeah.
aspect of apoptosis where it's called programmed cell death. Well, because that basically a cancer cell doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing other than replicating, and it gets really, really good at that. That's where the cancer is, and that's the growth factor of it. But fasting can help with that process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, fasting is an amazing practice that we've gotten away from. A lot of cultures fast. Fasting has been used as a religious practice for centuries, right? It's also been sort of like involuntary. In other words, cultures where they have food scarcity, right, end up fasting, not by choice, going several days without food at a time. And it's wonderful for your body to go without food, which sounds counterintuitive, right? But when you stop eating, what we know now is the ideal fast is 3 to 5 days on water. When you stop eating, your body goes into repair mode and protection mode. And it starts breaking down all this unused, accumulated crap that's built up in your body. And your cells sort of throw up these force field like defenses that protect them, and they start a process called autophagy, which is where they, again, break down parts of them that are not useful, and they burn those things for energy. It's kind of like if you were trapped in a cabin in a blizzard and you only had a fireplace for heat and you ran out of firewood. What would you do? Well, you'd start breaking down like the table and the chairs and the cabinets, right? You'd start burning everything in there that was non-essential to survival. You would burn for heat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To survive. You wouldn't throw your food in the fire, right? That's the last thing you'd throw in there. You wouldn't throw your blankets in there, but you would throw everything else in there. And so your cells are doing this same kind of process. And so healthy cells are really good at this process, autophagy, but cancer cells are bad at it. And so fasting actually weakens cancer cells. And during a fast, old and damaged cells in your body, which are known as senescent cells, die off. And this is good because your body, you have a lot of cells in your body that are senile. And senile cells, especially senile immune cells, are not good at their job anymore. Okay. So imagine an army full of senior citizens. Like, that's not a good army, right? And so during a fast, all these old and damaged cells, immune cells are the ones that we're particularly interested in, die. But then when you start eating again around, again, you want to fast between 3 and 5 days. Around, when you start eating again at the end of the fast, your body ramps up production of new immune cells, right? So it's called stem cell activation. Fasting triggers stem cell activation and regeneration. So it produces all of these brand new, young, healthy immune cells, right? That are like the 18, 19, 20-year-old soldiers, right? That are like, wait, let me at them. And they're cancer scavengers. That's what those cells are doing. I mean, there's a lot of different types of immune cells. We won't go into all that. But the point is, just for simplicity's sake, fasting regenerates your immune system. So powerful. And among a lot of other benefits in the body. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of fasting. Juice fasting is wonderful. It doesn't accomplish quite the same thing. It's great for weight loss and detoxification. But a pure water fast or the fasting mimicking diet, which is developed by a company called Prolon, those are two of the most powerful things you can do for yourself. And fasting costs you nothing.
Yeah,
Costs
it'll
nothing.
actually save you money in food because you
Yeah, you
aren't
save
eating
money.
for yeah.
Yes.
So that's basically 1/10 of the month. So your food budget just went down by 1/10, and you can afford to buy higher quality food.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's right. That's right. You
yeah.
save 3 to 5 days worth of groceries. That's significant for some people. That's hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, so
Right.
I'm definitely going to be doing some more experimentation with fasting in the coming year. I have to leave you with one last question. I define wellness as being the healthiest, fittest, and happiest you can be. What are 3 strategies or tactics to get and stay well?
That's good. I like your definition. The tactics that I think, the big takeaways here, I think, and I hope your audience will read my book because it just really goes deep and there's tons of science in there. But what I think, based on the available evidence and research and all these wonderful studies, number one is a plant-based diet. You don't have to be pure vegan, but if you can cut your animal product consumption, and I didn't get into all the ways that animal protein fuels cancer growth. It's in the book. But if you can cut it down from 3 times a day to 3 times a week, you're doing a huge favor for yourself. You're doing yourself so much good. Trust me on this. Number 2 is going to be exercising 30 to 60 minutes a day. And then the third thing, which I didn't get to get into, but I know we got a couple minutes, so I'll touch on it here, is stress. Stress is a root cause of many diseases. And it's one of those concepts that is most people don't have a great handle on it. Like, they know what stress feels like, right? But they don't know what's causing the stress, right? They don't know why they feel stressed. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And there's a lot more to it than they realize. So stress is a state in the body that is caused by conflict in emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical conflict. And to put it very simply, all negative thoughts produce negative emotions, which produce a negative stress response in the body, which is elevated adrenaline and cortisol. When those hormones are elevated, they suppress your immune function and they increase inflammation in the body. And when you have increased inflammation and suppressed immune function, your body is a place where cancer can thrive. So, when I said earlier at the very beginning, it's not about beating it, killing it, right? It's not about killing cancer, beating cancer, fighting cancer. It's about healing the body and creating an environment where cancer cannot thrive. So that involves nutrition, detoxification, and repair and regeneration. Improving your immune function is such a huge part of cancer healing and survival and prevention. So, stress suppresses your immunity. And if you have anger, jealousy, envy, prejudice, shame, and guilt, if you're carrying bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness, right? All of these negative thoughts and emotions, if you're carrying these things through life, what it does is it keeps you in a state of chronic stress. Not to mention work stress, family stress, like, the problems that come and go in life. That just piles on top of the baggage that you're already carrying. And I heard a great analogy that is, I think everyone can understand. Like, if I gave you a 5-pound dumbbell and I said, okay, hold this out to your side, right? Just hold it
Yeah.
up in the air, right? And I said, is that heavy? You would say, no. If I said, okay, well, just keep holding it, 5 minutes go by. Is it heavy now? You'd say, yeah, it's a little heavy. It's starting to feel a little heavy now.
Yeah.
If you held it for an hour, like, at some point, you've got to put it down, right? It's too heavy. The weight didn't change. And that's what bitterness and unforgiveness and all of these negative emotions and thoughts that we're carrying with us do to us. The longer we hold on to bitterness, the heavier it gets and the more it weighs us down and the more pain it causes us. So I talk about this in great detail in the book, but I want to just at least leave your audience with this one thing they can do right now, which is there's a lot more you can do to remove stress from your life, and you really should make it a priority. But forgiveness is the most powerful stress reducer in your life. The most powerful thing you can do is make a decision to forgive every person who has ever hurt you. That means going back in time, right? And thinking through your life. Like, you have to sit down and focus on this and let those people come up and let those memories come up and the painful ones, right? And one by one, choose to forgive. And the way you choose to forgive is pretty simple. Forgiveness is not a feeling, right? So you can still be mad and you can still forgive even if you're mad. And you should, because if you're waiting till you're not mad, you'll probably be waiting a long time. So there is an expression, time heals all wounds, and that's fine. But the longer you wait, the more pain you cause yourself. So what you do is, and the way I did it, and the way I think everyone should do it really, is you just say, okay, God, like, you know what they did. You know how I feel about it. And I'm still mad, but I'm giving it to you. I'm choosing to forgive them and I'm giving it to you. They're all yours. You can deal with them. I am not going to carry this. I'm not going to hold it against them anymore. Right. And we're doing it by name. I'm not just saying, I forgive everybody at once. Like, that doesn't work. You have to forgive John, right, for calling you an idiot or whatever. So, one by one, I just would give these people to God and just say, I'm forgiving them. I'm letting it go. They're all yours. And I'm asking you to bless them. I'm asking you to bless them, which sounds crazy. Like, I don't want blessing. I want a lightning bolt, right?
Yeah.
And God, and it's, by the way, it's, you're not being insincere. God knows your heart. He knows you don't want him to bless them. He knows. But the fact that you're asking him to bless them despite your feelings is so powerful. I'm telling you, man, it heals your heart. I mean, it
Yes.
just opens your heart up to healing like nothing else.
Well, Chris,
Jesus even
I'm
said,
sorry.
love your, yeah, well, I'll just say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute
Yes.
you. Some of the best life advice, period.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing those. Really, really, thank you for that. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, learn more about your book, Chris Beat Cancer, where would you like for me to send them?
It's easy to find. It's on Amazon. It's in Barnes and Noble, Books a Million. It's pretty much anywhere books are sold. If you love bookstores and you want to support your local bookstore, I want to encourage you to call up your favorite bookstore and ask them if they have it or ask them to order it for you. They can all get it. But if you don't care and you just want it right now, you can just get on Amazon and have it in 2 clicks and have it tomorrow, or download the audiobook, which is read by me, or the ebook or whatever. So it's pretty easy to get. My site is chrisbeatcancer.com. And the cool thing about the site is I've interviewed, I guess, over 70 people now who've healed all types and stages of cancer. So it's just an incredible resource of encouragement and inspiration and support that I've built over the last 8 years. Tons of articles and videos and interviews with doctors and experts and people who've healed. And it's just, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
something I just am so proud of and excited about. And I feel like it's doing a lot of good in the world. So
Well, good, good. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/355, and I'll have the links there in the show notes. So, Chris, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
thanks, Alan. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Chris is a pretty inspirational guy. I really enjoyed that conversation with him. The book is excellent. A lot of us are dealing with cancer. I think the last statistic I saw was that pretty much every human being on earth at some point in their life is going to have cancer and a diagnosable cancer. So, we talked about that. But so this is a very important issue. And Chris's approach, while, not down mainstream medicine's ballywick for the most part, actually is kind of a message of hope. And if you are dealing with cancer or someone in your family is dealing with cancer, I think Chris and what he has to offer are great, and you should check him out more. So please do that. And I guess the question I got before I cut out here is, have you got your pre-order on the Wellness Roadmap book yet? What are you waiting for? It's in Amazon right now. You can go to Amazon and you can search for Wellness Roadmap, and it's going to come up first. Good, because now people are in there paying attention to it. So Amazon sees it and they value it. If you search my name, which the last time I tried to search my name on there, it still wants to send me to an audio mixer. Maybe that's just me. I know Amazon's pretty smart and probably knows that I'm doing a podcast because I buy all of my equipment through them. So they're thinking I want a mixer, but I'm not a mixer. It's not an Allen mixer. It's an Alan Meisner. So I have to tell them, no, not mixer. Yes, I actually meant to search for Alan Meisner. So if you type in Alan Meisner and don't see the book, go ahead. And even if you put book, it's going to put up books about mixers, but which is bizarre. But anyway, you go in there, you can type in my name, Alan Meisner, and then actually click on Alan Meisner, and it'll take you to the book. You can pre-order the audiobook right now at an insanely low price. It's the actual lowest price that Amazon will let me offer the book. I cannot offer it for free at this point. So 99 cents is as low as I can offer it. It's probably going to be different in different markets. I know I was hearing from India and the UK that they couldn't actually pre-order it yet. And I'm sorry, that's, Amazon being Amazon. We've done everything on our side to make sure that the book was available, but I guess that's just their way. It'll be available December 4th, I think, for everybody else. So please do go out, get a copy of the book. I really do think if you enjoy what we're doing on this podcast, you're going to love this book. And please, once you get it, when you've had an opportunity to look at it, go give me an honest rating and review. Amazon is that weird one that, when I say, Apple really cares about reviews and Google really cares about reviews, well, Amazon will not show my book for much longer if they don't see these ratings and reviews. So I know if you've been on Amazon, you go to buy a book, you look at a book, you see people who bought this book or also bought that book, or people who like this book also like that book. Those things, that whole algorithm, that whole recommendation thing, that is all based on those ratings and reviews that you do. So please, 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 if you enjoyed the book, go out and give me an honest rating and review. That's really going to help boost this book and let me help as many people as possible. So thank you for that. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Michelle Stanford and discuss her book, Informed Consent. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.